The first thing I heard was the doorbell, 3 quick presses, like whoever was out there couldn't wait for me to answer. It was raining, the kind of cold October rain that soaks through in seconds. I opened the door expecting a delivery. Instead, I saw Vanessa, 10 years older, soaked to the bone, mascara running down her face in 2 thin black lines. The woman who had once been engaged to me, the woman who called off our wedding 11 days before it happened, was standing on my porch holding a garbage bag full of clothes, like it was a suitcase. For a second, neither of us said anything. Rain dripped off her chin. Somewhere behind her, a taxi idled at the curb, meter running, waiting to see if she'd need it again. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because 10 years earlier, I was the one standing outside in the rain, banging on a door that wouldn't open, begging someone to explain what I'd done wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. In 2015, I was 29 years old and building something I actually believed in. Vanessa and I had been together 5 years. She was sharp, funny, ambitious, the kind of woman who made you want to be better just by standing next to her. I thought I'd found my partner, in every sense of the word. My business partner, Ray Delgado, was the other half of that belief. We'd started a small logistics consulting firm 2 years earlier, working out of a rented office above a dry cleaner. Ray was charming in that effortless way, the kind of guy who remembered your coffee order and made investors feel like old friends. Looking back, I realized that should have worried me more than it did. Vanessa and Ray got along instantly. Dinners, holiday parties, weekend trips, the 3 of us were always together. I thought that was a good sign. I thought it meant my 2 worlds fit. 11 days before our wedding, Vanessa sat me down at our kitchen table. She said she needed to figure some things out. No details. No explanation. Just that. I told her to take the time she needed. I trusted her. 3 days later, my sister called me, her voice shaking. She'd seen Vanessa and Ray leaving a hotel downtown, arm in arm, laughing like nothing in the world was wrong. I confronted Vanessa that night. She didn't deny it. She said something I've never forgotten. Ray sees where I'm going. You just see where we are. 2 days after that, Ray texted me. Not a call, a text. Said he was stepping back from the company to focus on new opportunities. He'd already liquidated his shares, already moved his savings, already gone. I lost my fiancé and my business partner in the same week, over the same decision. I don't remember much of the month after that, not in order. I remember sitting in the empty office above the dry cleaner, staring at a lease I couldn't afford alone. I remember calling every client myself, explaining that Ray was no longer with the firm, without explaining why. I remember the caterer for the wedding refusing to refund the deposit, saying, "Well, the flowers are already ordered." I laughed at that one, not because it was funny, because if I hadn't laughed, I would have put my fist through the wall. The months that followed weren't dramatic. They were worse. They were ordinary. I worked 18-hour days trying to save a company that was hemorrhaging clients. I moved out of the apartment Vanessa and I shared, into a studio that smelled like old carpet. I stopped going to the coffee shop near our old office because I couldn't stand the chance of running into either of them. Slowly, the business survived. Not because I felt like fighting for it, because giving up felt worse than fighting. I rebuilt the client list, one relationship at a time. I hired 2 employees, then 5, then 12. Nothing glamorous. Just steady. Just mine. 10 years passed. And then, on a rainy Tuesday night, the doorbell rang 3 times. "Marcus, Her voice cracked on my name. I didn't know where else to go. I stood in the doorway, one hand still on the frame, staring at the woman who once told me I didn't see far enough. She looked smaller than I remembered. Tired in a way that makeup couldn't hide. Vanessa. My voice came out flatter than I expected. It's been a while. 10 years. She tried to smile. It didn't work. An uncomfortable silence followed. Not because I didn't know what to say, because I knew exactly what I wanted to say, and none of it felt necessary anymore. Can I come in? Just for a few minutes. I have nowhere else. I stepped aside. Not because I owed her anything. Because it was pouring rain, and some part of me still remembered who I used to be before all of this. She sat at my kitchen table, the same kind of table, in a different life, and the story came out in pieces, the way stories do when someone's been holding them in too long. Ray's new opportunities had been a string of businesses that all failed the same way: fast starts, big promises, investor money that disappeared faster than it arrived. He and Vanessa had married 2 years after leaving me. For a while, it looked like winning: a bigger house, nicer cars, vacations posted online for everyone to see. Everybody thought I had it made, she said, staring into a coffee cup she wasn't drinking. I got really good at pretending. The last venture, she told me, had collapsed 8 months ago. Ray had taken out loans against everything: the house, her car, even her mother's savings, co-signed years earlier during a sure-thing investment round. When the company folded, Ray didn't stay to explain it to creditors. He left the way he'd left my company: a text message. And then nothing. He's gone, she said. I don't even know where. I don't think I want to know. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I already understood the shape of this story. I'd lived the first chapter of it myself. He saw you as a shortcut, I said quietly. That's what he does. That's what he did to me too. Vanessa's eyes filled. I know that now. I think some part of me always knew it. I just didn't want to believe I'd made a mistake that big. I should tell you, I didn't feel the triumph I always imagined I'd feel in this moment. For years, some version of me had rehearsed what I'd say if Vanessa ever showed up needing something. I imagined feeling powerful, vindicated. I imagined slamming the door. Instead, sitting across from her, I mostly just felt tired. And a little sad. Not for what we'd had. That had been gone a long time. But for how much time she'd spent proving a version of success that was never real. You know what the worst part is, she said. Everyone thought I won. Nice house. Nicer everything. And I spent 10 years afraid he'd do to me exactly what he did to you. Every time he was late, every time a deal almost worked out, I think, what if I'm next? I thought about my own 10 years, the studio apartment, the 18-hour days, the version of me that rebuilt a company out of nothing but stubbornness and spite. It hadn't felt like winning at the time either. It had just felt like getting up every day and refusing to quit. But somewhere in those 10 years, without noticing exactly when, it had become winning. A company with 40 employees now, a house I owned outright, a quiet, steady life with people who actually showed up when they said they would. I'm not going to pretend this doesn't feel strange, I told her. You sitting here. I know I don't deserve anything from you. You don't, I agreed. Not cruelly, just honestly. But it's raining, and you clearly have nowhere else tonight. There's a guest room. You can stay tonight. Tomorrow, we figure out a plan, a shelter, a family member, something real. But I'm not going to pretend I'm the answer to this, Vanessa. I'm not your rescue. I already used up everything I had rebuilding my own life, without one. She nodded, wiping her eyes with the sleeve of a soaked coat. That's more than fair. 6 months later, I was sitting on my back porch on a Saturday morning, coffee in hand, watching my nephew chase our dog around the yard. Simple, ordinary. The kind of morning I used to think was boring, back when I measured a good life by how impressive it looked from the outside. Vanessa had stayed one night, and one night only. I helped her find a caseworker, made a few calls to contacts who owed me favors, and by the end of that week she had a job lead and a temporary place to stay. We haven't spoken since, beyond one short text a few weeks later. Thank you. I mean it. I'm going to be okay. I believe her. I hope she is. Here's what I've come to understand. 10 years and one rainy doorbell later, Ray and Vanessa didn't leave because they found something better. They left because, for a while, it looked easier. And easier things rarely last, because they're never built on anything real. I spent a decade rebuilding what they tried to take from me, not out of revenge, but because quitting felt worse than trying. And somewhere in all that rebuilding, without a single dramatic moment to mark it, I became the version of myself I used to only hope I'd get to be. If you've ever had someone walk away and leave you standing in the wreckage of a life you were building together, I hope you remember this. The people who leave don't get to define what happens next. Only you do. And sometimes, the people who thought they were leaving you behind are the ones who end up standing outside your door, in the rain, with nowhere else left to go.